Hey, what's up guys? Nate here. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving with your family. I hope you were able to eat lots of good food and get a small break because I know that you probably need it. Now you're ready to hit the grind again today. So yesterday I posted a video kind of breaking down the initial steps that we would take when taking on a new client or looking at a new client or a new business and how we would rapidly scale them to at least 7 figures and beyond. Typically we're shooting from anywhere between, $1 million to $10 million, if not beyond that, and thinking about that long term. Now, that got me thinking when I was going through that video about a problem that I think there is in most industries, and I think it mainly plagues the online industry. And that problem is that all everyone thinks about is $1 million. It's all about all you need to do is make $1 million and you're good. All you need to do is, make 7 figures, scale that e-commerce store to 7 figures, and just $1 million flat, and you're golden. You're ready. But the issue is that $1 million, it's just not that much money. And I want to break that down today using the same number sheet that I did yesterday, kind of show you just why $1 million in just the grand scheme of things isn't that much money, and why, it comes down to mindset a little bit. I know some people are just, weird about mindset and stuff like that. But the purpose is just to think bigger, think long term, think scalability, and think profitability. Stop thinking about and getting boggled down by 7 figures. Now, while $1 million is a good goal, and while it's that initial first goal that I think we should be trying to hit in terms of taking that business from a hobby to a real business, it shouldn't be the end all goal. It shouldn't be that this is the only goal that we need. That's not thinking long term, and that's not thinking, where your business can actually go, setting up an actual process and systems to either be able to make a solid exit out of that business to invest in something else, or to think about how you can actually grow your market share. I'm not in the business of just making people a lot of money, but creating long-term growth and scalability inside their business. And so today I want to just break down those numbers for you using the sheet that I used yesterday. We can look at just some actual solid numbers from a real company and be able to see the idea of just how $1 million works. And we're going to break that down. But first, guys, I post at least one video every day during the week talking just about business structures and systems and entrepreneurship and marketing and e-commerce. And I also like to report on the newest marketing updates, what's happening in the industry and the changes that are happening when it's something other than the pandemic or the election. So if you love receiving those updates and you love learning about systems and how to grow as an entrepreneur and as a marketer, make sure that you subscribe to the channel down below if you haven't yet. Thank you guys so much. All right, let's go ahead and let's jump right in. All right, guys, so here's the sheet from yesterday. I prettied it up a little bit more, but I didn't spend, again, a whole ton of time on it because you don't need to spend a whole ton of time making sure spreadsheets look good. It's not something that's incredibly important, especially when it's just a small goal, setting sheet like this, So these are just some conservative numbers that I laid out for $1 million in revenue. I'm not going to go through each of these numbers. If you want to, watch me break down each of these numbers, I'll post the link, right here or whatever, where you can click. So if you want to watch that after this video, it'll also be posted at the end of the video if you want to watch it. It's a pretty long video. I'd encourage you to watch the whole thing, but if you just want to watch the numbers breakdown, you can skip ahead to that. I do have the chapter set on that video. So these are very conservative numbers. The whole point of setting conservative numbers is to set those numbers and then hit above those numbers. That's the whole point. You don't want to be super crazy and say like, oh, I know we're going to get a 5% click-through rate, and then all of these numbers are just super skewed and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's assume industry averages and just kind of work from there. This is a living document. It's something that's changed, and so it's okay to make adjustments as time moves forward. Maybe week, do it by week, do it by month, and be able to see how those things change and how you can grow. So this is these are some real business numbers, and I'm assuming $30 cost, and this business had a $100 AOV on average per order, and CPMS. Again, these are just kind of set as industry averages and just as minimums to look at. All of these are pretty reasonable goals to try and hit, but even so, CPMS might be a little bit higher to start out, but it all depends on just the actual how the funnel actually looks itself. And so given all of these numbers, $400,000 in spend, we're looking at a $700,000 profit. the whole point of laying this out to kind of look like an income statement. I'm not an accountant by any means. My background is in finance, so I understand how accounting kind of works, but not, all the crazy laws and whatnot. But at the end of the day, revenue is very misleading. That's if you want to know the overall point of this video. Revenue is so misleading because that's not the actual money that you hold in your hand at the end of the day. It's not revenue. It's not even profit. It's going to be net income. That's the actual money at the end of the day or at the end of the year that actually comes back around to help you in the next year. So I'm a lot more focused on profit, net income, and cash flow typically than I am revenue. Revenue is just kind of a goal. It's something that can look good. It makes you look good, but it might not always, help you at the end of the day. And so let's go ahead and just run through these numbers really quickly. I made a couple just of assumptions here. I'm assuming you got some employees. And so let's assume just, cost of some employees. Maybe you have 3 employees at $12, 3 employees at $15, assuming 40 hours a week, 4 weeks, 160, and then those employees. And so this is on a per month basis on how much each of these employees cost, and this is on a per year basis, and that's total per year for all those employees. I would not recommend trying to make $1 million by yourself. That just doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. Go ahead and hire some employees. But if we look at it here, just after profit, so this is just minus cost of goods sold, coming away with $70,000, or I'm sorry, $700,000 from $1 million. And you got 2.5 ROAS on 400K in ad spend, but you still got to subtract that ad spend, right? So we got to go away from 700,000 minus that 400,000, 300,000. So that's actually what you're coming away with, and that might, net revenue might not actually be the correct term from that. It might be might actually be gross revenue. Probably not the right term, but not super important. Just understand that you have to subtract your spend from that actual profit, because marketing platforms don't care what your what your profits are. You're still gonna have to pay for that marketing, so you have to subtract that out of your actual costs to get $300,000. So now let's look at actual other expenses. You got to pay yourself. You're gonna have to live, and so let's just assume a salary of $75,000. Might be higher in some, to live out in California. It might be a little bit hard to live off $75,000. But to live, somewhere where I live, like in the sort of in the northeast side of the states, $75,000 is reasonably good. But let's just, like I said, this is all about being conservative. Let's just set a conservative number, $75,000. Now let's add in those employee expenses of $155,000 there. And let's assume some software expenses. There are going to be software expenses. I think $15,000 is actually probably a little bit low. I've seen easily $1 million companies that are spending at least $2,500 to $5,000 per month on software. So not very uncommon that there's going to be huge software expenses. Then you have operating expenses of $20,000. This is miscellaneous operating expenses. And guess what? There's probably going to be other expenses in here. Like I said, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not sitting here going through, somebody's statements and listing out other expenses. But for a small business, I'm assuming these numbers because small businesses typically don't have a million line items in their expenses. But there's probably going to be some other expenses. And so just be prepared for that. And so we have to take all of these, and we actually have to subtract it from the actual revenue here itself. And so if we take this number and we actually subtract the sum of all of these, you get $34,000. That came a long way from $1 million, am I right? Now, everyone's feeling good. Everyone's getting paid. You're making money. But again, it's about looking at the overall business health. And so if we look at that here, you're coming away with $34,000 on here. And now don't forget Uncle Sam. This is earnings before interest and taxes. Don't even forget Uncle Sam here. He hasn't gotten paid yet, and he's going to get paid. And so I assumed a tax rate of 30%. It's probably not going to be that high. I think the average is like 19 to 23%, somewhere in between there. Every business is set up their tax structure differently. You know, an LLC is going to be different, an S corp is going to be different, a C corp is going to be different. And so I just assumed 30% at, the mid, at just stay conservative. Let's be conservative about this. All right. And so we take out those taxes, that ends up being around $10,000 net income for the year from $1 million. Remember, we started $1 million. It comes out to only 24,000. That's pretty crazy, right? It doesn't seem like that makes any sense at all. Um, but when you're thinking like a business and you're thinking about all these expenses, just I can't even tell you how quickly expenses can just flow in. I listened to a guy talk about scaling today, and one thing he said was when you're trying to scale, there's a sound that scaling makes. It's the whooshing and sucking of money, and that's literally insanely accurate. To scale costs money, to grow costs money, and it's just about making those slight changes. And that's those slight changing those metrics slightly to be able to gradually change these numbers. And I'll show you how we mean. This is why marketers focus a lot on even just getting click-through rate up just 0.5%. And I'm going to show you why. This is going to blow your mind. I'm just going to change click-through rate to 3%. That's it. Take that 2.5, get it to 3%. Now look at this. All of a sudden, that changed from 700,000 to 840,000. That changed from 300,000 to 440,000. And now if we look at all our expenses down here, that went from 24,000 to 122,000. Not bad. Pretty good. Now, even let's look at this for a second though. So that's 122,000 for the year. Keep in mind, this is like the money you have in your account at the end of the year, right? And so let's say you want to sustain this. Let's look at it on a monthly basis. If we look at that spend, you want to keep that spend going. I mean, $33,000, that's a pretty good chunk of change that's going to come out of that, right at the beginning of the year. And so that's just after month one. And that's assuming that everything stays the same and everything remains the same. And so the whole point of showing this, and this isn't even leaving out other things, like if you're in e-commerce, there might be some, you're going to have a default rate that you might have to send out returns on that for. There might be warehouse space that you have to pay for. There might, leasing stuff that you have to pay for. But that's why all of these numbers stay conservative, and we're trying to just get better on all these numbers. We're trying to get a conversion rate higher than 2.5%. We're trying to get a click-through rate higher than 2.5%. But the reality is if you look at it, I mean, 75,000, that's not the Lamborghini style beach house that everyone's talking about all the time, right? That's not the I'm driving the Rolls Royce tomorrow. I mean, you're still living pretty frugally off of 75,000 at the end of that. And so, thinking like a rich person thinks, and this is just one business. So if we're thinking about how a rich person thinks, and we're thinking about actual growth and scalability, it's about thinking beyond these numbers. It's about thinking about multi-business, right? The average entrepreneur has 5 to 7 sources of income. This is just from one business. So what if you could make 75,000 from 4 other businesses? Okay, well that's going to turn out a lot better. But if we're thinking in terms of long-term growth and long-term strategy, it's about thinking bigger than these numbers. So let's take it up here. Let's say we want to go to 2 million, right? Let's say all these numbers stay consistent. Well, now, if all these results stay the same, and again, it's very conservative, there's probably going to be more employees here. So let's say at least 5 employees here, and at least another employee high here. You figured out some systems to help you work, and so now you didn't have to hire as many employees. The next 2 million and the next million. Well, now that 24,000 turns into 181,000. Right? Big difference there. It seems like wait a minute, shouldn't it just double then to 24,000? Well, no, because if you're able to devise good systems, these costs remained the same. And this is where you kind of have to think about the actual expenses, how much you're paying yourself, and not feeding yourself the profits that come out of the company. But you could come away with 181,000. Well, now that's 181,000 to invest in the business the next year. So maybe let's increase, let's say we're just going to invest all of that net income back into the business, and let's just increase this to 900,000. Well, now you've gone to 2.2 million, and the next year you've grown another almost about, see, that was 180,000. So you've grown about another 50,000 or so. Pretty reasonable growth for the year. I mean, if you're looking at, not everyone, you shouldn't expect 150% growth every year. It's very possible, but you should by no means expect that. I mean, I'm shooting for most companies, especially once they reach the $1 million mark, you should be shooting for, depending on the industry, maybe 10 to 20% each year, or you can even look at it by a monthly basis. Maybe 20% every month is what you could try and look for, and it really just goes up from there, and it just kind of gets better from there. This is why setting these goals and looking at these sheets, well, it's way too big, are pretty exciting, because you can look at it. Okay, if all of these things remain the same, I'm devising better systems, and I'm looking at actual long-term growth. If we're looking at this on a per-year basis, you could be going from 24,000 in net income one year to 549,000 in maybe 3 to 4 years. This is where leveraging things like debt can come in really handy and become really important. But the whole point to show, if we're just talking about $1 million itself, let's see, we got to remove those employees, those last employees there, because you only needed 6 employees for the $1 million. Doesn't come out to that much money at the end of the day. Everyone's happy, but at the same time, this is not, long-term growth. 24,000, it's just not enough for long-term scalability and long-term growth. So something important really to think about. I hope this kind of changed your mindset and let you in on why you should be thinking long-term, why we're always thinking long-term growth, long-term scalability, and how we can improve each and every one of these numbers just to make a slight difference. Even just a slight difference here took that $24,000 and made it into $122,000. This is why these metrics are so important, and this is why it's important to get out of that mindset of $1 million and start thinking about your long-term growth strategy. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you found value in it, make sure that you hit that like button down below and share it all over your social media profiles. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Thank you guys so much. Until next time.